Okay, welcome to the Jewish Federation and Jewish Foundation of Nashville and Middle Tennessee Girls Night In VIP pre-reception. I want to thank our friends at Red Wine and Spirits for providing some of the ingredients in our box. So thanks to Red Wine and Spirits. Make sure you go by and say hi to them. They donated most of the items for our box. My name is Jessica Cohen-Banish. I'm the Marketing Director for Jewish Federation. And in just a minute, I'm going to be handing things over to our expert mixologist, Nikki, who will be giving us step-by-step instructions on how to construct the Moscow Mule using the ingredients in your box. Now, after we make our drinks with Nikki, we're gonna have a quick toast, and then we're going to be going into breakout rooms to mingle with each other and to meet new friends in our community. We're gonna mix and mingle until the main event begins at 7:30. Don't worry, we're gonna do all of the tech work for you, so you're just gonna go straight into that room and we'll bring you back when it's time for the main event to begin. Without further ado, it is our pleasure to welcome mixologist Nikki McCutcheon. Now, Nikki is the Tao Group Beverage Director of New York Hotels and also a certified sommelier. And tonight, Nikki is going to be guiding us through making the Moscow Mule. Hey, Nikki. Nikki, are you there? There's Nikki.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here making this with you all. It was great inspiration, our guests of honor later this evening. We wanted to do something that paid a little homage to both Russia and Tennessee, where you guys are. And so we came up with our Moscow Bell, a little quick history about the vodka we're going to be using this evening. If you know, maybe you don't, Russia has kind of been known for its vodka. In the 1600s, Russia had a monopoly on a lot of the taverns in Europe. A lot of other European countries were doing beer and wine. Russia really cornered the market on vodka because it had the best margin and profit. So then it made its way over to the United States, and everyone associated with vodka with Russia. In the 1940s, they came up with a Russian cocktail, including vodka, called the Moscow Mule. They named it that, again, because no one was really drinking vodka at the time, and the only vodka they were drinking was from Russia. And Mule, because they added the other ingredient, which is ginger beer, which gives it a kick, aka the Mule. Very punny, very American of us to do that. So yeah, here are our ingredients. You have your mason jar, and as Jessie said earlier, you're gonna fill it up with some ice. We're gonna use this to mix this evening. I love, if you don't have a traditional cocktail mixing set, to use a mason jar with a lid to mix cocktails. Super easy. So we're gonna take our vodka first. This bottle is exactly 1.6 ounces, so you can use your jigger to pour it, or you can just pour the whole thing in because we're using the whole thing. So we'll start with this. Now, sometimes I say to start with the non-alcoholic ingredients, just in case you make a mistake and you have to pour it out. You don't want to waste the good stuff. But tonight, you know, it's all about having fun, and it doesn't matter how much you pour because you're going to want to drink it anyway. So we have our vodka in here now. Next, we're going to use our lime juice. We're going to do 0.75 ounces. So if you look at your jigger, the bigger side is 1 ounce. You want to go just below the lip. So don't fill all the way. You want to fill it about 3/4 of the way full to do 0.75 ounces of lime juice. Now, if you want to make a non-alcoholic version of this, if you have kids, if you're not drinking this evening, obviously skip the vodka, go right to the lime juice. And you can do 1 ounce if you want to do it a little bit more tart, less sweet, but start here with the lime juice now, pour it over the ice. Next, we're going to take our cute little jams. So instead of like a sweetener or simple syrup, we're going to use this evening. Again, a little fun southern twist on it. And you have a little spoon here. You're going to take 2 big spoonfuls of the jam and put it right in your drink. Gives it some fun texture and also really delicious taste. Again, if you want it a little sweeter, you know your taste better than I do, you can put slightly more. If you don't want it so sweet, cut back. Okay. Now, I know we have 2 other ingredients, but they're both carbonated And I don't know if you ever made cocktails at home before, but the biggest mistake is shaking a carbonated drink. You don't know how many parties I've been to where people are making things at home. They pour in the ginger beer, they pour in the club soda, they start to shake, and it explodes everywhere. So we're not going to do that this evening. We're going to put our top on with just these ingredients. Make sure it's shut tight. We're going to give it a hard shake, especially because we have that jam in there that's a little denser. Give it a hard shake for about 20-30 seconds. It's nice that it's see-through because you can kind of make sure you're getting it all broken up. Okay, so now we have this really pretty kind of like orange sickle color. It's all right if you still have a little bit of chunks at the bottom, they'll taste great in the drink. We're gonna open this carefully and pour it into our cute little copper mugs here. You can pour the ice right in, you can use fresh ice, it's totally up to you. I heard somebody had an ice shortage, so using this ice is totally fine. All right. Now we're gonna open our ginger beer. You're gonna pour about 3 ounces. So I'd say about like just over half of the, or under half, like 40% of the can into here. Okay. We're gonna take our club soda and just top it off with this. You can take your little spoon here and just give it a little stir. Okay, and now we're ready for these awesome garnishes. You can use it as a garnish or you can just eat it. I think they're adorable, so I'm gonna put one on my mug. Your little jelly fruits. Just put it right here in the middle. Put it on your mug. And voila, we have our Moscow Belle. How's everyone's look? I see a few out there. Those look great. Cheers.
Everybody, ladies, let's raise our glasses. Everybody have their drink. And if you don't have a Moscow Belle, that's okay. Whatever alcohol or non-alcohol beverage you have. And we're going to lift up our glasses, and together we say L'chaim.
L'chaim.
L'chaim. L'chaim.
Thank you so very much.
Of course. Thank you for having me. Have a great evening, ladies.
Thank you.
Unmuted. I assume when it really starts, it'll mute everybody.
Welcome, everybody. We're going to start in just a few minutes. I hope everybody is doing well tonight. Those of you who were in the VIP rooms, I hope that you enjoyed your cocktails. If you were not in a VIP room, this is your chance to go and grab a beverage of choice because the drinking is not over, ladies. We're going to have a toast as soon as Sasha Shore begins in just a couple of minutes. So if you don't already have a beverage in front of you, whether it be alcohol or non-alcohol, go ahead and grab your drink now. I want to welcome everybody tonight. Let's see who's on here. I see Natalie. Welcome, Natalie. Katie Wayne. Welcome, Katie. Miss Beth is here from Akiva School. Hi, Miss Beth. And Jessica, I see Miss Jessica too. Hey, Jessica, welcome, ladies. We're so happy to have you.
Where's Jessica? Let me see that photo.
I didn't know that I could talk. Sorry, I thought we were. Hi.
I see Rachel Hedges, the PTFA from Akiva president. Are you the president? PTFA president, Rachel. Is that your official title?
I'm a co-chair.
Co-chair. I gave you a fancier title.
But we don't have a president, so.
I see Arlene. Welcome, Arlene. I see lots of Akiva parents on here tonight. I see Ellie. Welcome, Ellie. Nice to see everybody. Lana, welcome, Lana. There's Alyssa Trackman. Alyssa, you're here. I didn't think you were going to make it. It's good to see Alyssa. Lots of mothers and daughters here, too. I like that. And some sisters. I saw the Gold sisters are here. The Trackman sisters are here. Hi, Pam. It's good to see you.
Hi, good to see you.
I'm excited to see a bunch of my friends that I haven't seen in months. Just seeing their faces makes me so happy.
Hi, Elijah.
Oh, I see Elijah. I see Yael is here. Yael Coleman is making an appearance.
Teaching them young.
Teaching them young. That's right. So Amy is here and Lana is here. So Lana Parr and Amy Goldstein, they are the co-chairs of Girls Night In. We're going to hear more from them in just a few minutes. Lynn Fleischer. Hey, Lynn. Good to see Lynn. Jamie Brooke is here. Welcome, Jamie. Leslie Kirby. Welcome, Leslie. It's so nice to see everybody here today. It's so hard because I'm used to seeing everybody's face around the J and around town, and it's just nice to see everybody's face here. Rachel Cant, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Nancy Shapiro, welcome. Welcome. If you don't already have a beverage, go grab one because our guest Sasha Shore is going to start with a toast. So welcome everybody. This is the Jewish Federation and Jewish Foundation of Nashville and Middle Tennessee Girls Night In with special guest, renowned chef and creative branding guru, Sasha Shore. My name is Jessica Cohen-Banish, and like most of us, I have many titles. Professionally, I'm the marketing director for the Jewish Federation and Jewish Foundation of Nashville and Middle Tennessee. I'm also a mom to two awesome little girls who attend Akiva school and a wife to a husband who I absolutely adore and complain about to my girlfriends because that's what we do. In my former life, when I used to be cool, I was a radio talent and I worked in the music industry. And I'm also a Jewish woman who is proud to be part of this incredibly unique Jewish community in Nashville and Middle Tennessee. Tonight, I welcome you on behalf of the professional staff of Jewish Federation and on behalf of the chairs for tonight's event, Amy Goldstein and Lana Parr. Amy and Lana, thank you both for your time, dedication, creative input, and strength. You are both such powerhouses, and our Jewish community is lucky to have you here, and I'm also lucky to have you as my friends. We're going to hear from Lana and Amy later on this evening. We also want to thank the 57 GNI hosts who help us spread the word about the event and who volunteer their time to help make this possible. As you've probably heard, it takes a village, and the Jewish women in our community make up the best village a woman could ask for. Thank you also to Red Spirits and Wine for donating most of the ingredients in the cocktail boxes for the VIP reception. In a few moments, Sasha will begin. If you have any questions during the presentation, please remember them or write them down because you will have a chance to interact with Sasha at the end of the presentation during the question and answer portion of the program. All right, ladies, are we ready? Let's get this party started. Welcome everybody, special guest, Sasha Shore.
Hey guys, how are you? Thank you so much, Jessica. Thank you everyone at the Jewish Federation, the JCC, and everyone who's part of this community. It's such a pleasure to be here and to share this night with you guys. But before we do anything else, by Russian tradition, I know some of you already have a cocktail, but why don't we start by having a little toast? And in Russia, it's very traditional to have a toast and to be able to sort of kick off whatever meal or celebration that you're having with a little bit of a warm gesture. So I have an icy shot of vodka, which is my favorite because just gets to the point quicker, you know? And I always chase it with something pickled. So these are Russian fermented cherry tomatoes, and they're a perfect little pop to chase a shot of vodka with. So raise your glass, let's have a toast together. And I'm actually going to drink this. This is actually vodka, and then I'm actually gonna cook. So let's see how that goes. Toast, l'chaim na zdarovya, as we say in Russian. Ooh. Perfect. All right. So now that we have that out of the way, let's get one more thing out of the way. How do we spell the word borscht? I think that a lot of people spell it with the letter T, sorry. And I had to look this up because I couldn't figure it out myself. And there's apparently a real history around this because in Russia, the Russian language has a real sort of strength and accented kind of feel to it. And when you speak Russian words, they have a real punctuated kind of sound at the end. So when you say borscht in Russian, it almost sounds like you're ending with the letter T. So I think in the transliteration, somewhere along the way, the letter T got added to it. So in reality, the word borscht is 4 Russian letters, a B sound, an O sound, an R sound, and one letter that makes an SH sound similar to a shin in Hebrew. So borscht is the way that you say it in Russian, and there is no T. So I don't know. Everyone spells it with a T. I don't know why. I'm fine with it either way, but I prefer it with no T. So that's the legend, that's the lore. So a little bit about me. We came to Nashville from Russia when I was 7 years old in 1979. And I think a lot of you who are on tonight might have sort of lived this with me. I feel like there's a lot of people on tonight that I've heard from even before the event who really just sort of connected with me, and they said, wow, I remember when you came from Russia. I remember meeting you for the first time. I remember you didn't even know how to speak English. I remember your family, and I mean, I get goosebumps listening to that now because we've all obviously come so far. But in reality, you know, coming to a place like Nashville, or any place for that matter, from another country as a child was pretty intense. And I think that we were really, really lucky to have the Fleischer family, Pauline Tenzel, Doris Fleischer, Jerry Fleischer, their children, Jack and Sherry, and Jack's wife, Daniela, who some of you might know. We were very, very lucky to have this incredible family that we were related to, who helped us come to America and made our sort of life possible. And the Jewish Federation played a really big role as well in bringing, you know, helping our family assimilate here in Nashville. So assimilating, you know, I think, you know, you think about all the things that you know, encounter, you go through when you come to another country, and obviously there's the things that are like the really necessary ones. You know, you need housing, you need food, you need a little bit of a community to try to help you kind of get your bearings, and you need a language, obviously, if you're going to sort of be a part of that community and be able to communicate with the people that you live with. Obviously, none of us spoke very good English, so the food was one of the big things for us that was a real anchor. And for us, Russian food really was a way of sort of connecting with our country. So while everything on the outside was, you know, very American and very Southern and you know, very connective in their own right and in communities of their own, we were pretty insulated, you know, in terms of our family. And I think food was a way for us to feel connected, to feel like we're at home, and to feel like we're a part of something that we connect with and helped us kind of, you know, get through some of the harder times. And I think that as I started to grow up, I realized that we were living in the South, and my first food language was Russian, and we like to call them food languages because they're sort of a connective sort of cultural way that we connect with food. And my second food language became soul food. So when we came, we sort of landed in this culinary culture and tradition that we didn't really know existed. It was a really phenomenal thing to experience, very scary, but also really rich. Like there was so much to discover. We were so curious. We wanted to go everywhere and see things and do things and smell everything and taste everything. And it was a real, you know, everything was brand new. I mean, it literally like landed on another planet. But we learned fast. and we fell in love even faster. You know, how can biscuits with honey butter and sweet corn casserole and buttermilk gravy not steal your heart? You know, I mean, soul food's got a real, history to it. It has so much soul. And from our first next door neighbor on White Bridge Road, her name was Colette, who shared her sweet tea with me and her fried apple cinnamon hand pies, to our longtime friend and coworker Dale, who worked with my father at Village Jewelers for many, many years, who would always bring lunch in, and it would always be ribs and collards and baked beans and all of these things that we'd never even experienced, and we were able to sort of try for the first time. So I was pretty smitten with this, really interesting culture, because there was not a lot of shortcuts. It was just like our food. Everything was made from scratch. Everything was sort of time honored. Time was an ingredient like everything else. And we'd visit friends' homes, and you'd smell these bubbling meat braises and these old Dutch ovens, and there was, cast iron pans on the stovetops, with sizzling things in them, and pancakes and all these things that we really didn't have any idea of, but we were so eager and excited to learn, and every new taste was a new and exciting adventure. So, everything, from preserved jams and jellies to pickles and, of every kind of variety, these pantries full of, jars of pickles and tomatoes. And the culture of preservation is so native to Eastern European culture. So when we came to the South and we started to see that there was so many similarities, it was pretty fascinating. And we were really excited to be a part of it. So to us, or to me at least, I learned soul food along with sort of assimilating into American culture. So it was kind of hand in hand in a way, and it was something really beautiful to experience. And, that brings you to like iconic foods. What's iconic? What do you think of when you think about where you grew up? What do you think of when, you think of all your taste memories and all the things that you experienced as a kid? So what smell brings you back to being 5 years old or 6 years old or 7 years old? What taste makes you think of sitting at your grandmother's house or sitting at a family meal on a weekend? And for me, it's borscht. I mean, I think, of all the things that were sort of iconic in my mind that made appearances, weekly in our home, I think borscht was one of them. I think there was green borscht, there was red borscht, there was borscht with beets, there was borscht without beets. It was always some variation of like a cabbage soup with all of the, the carrots and the onions and the garlic and all the things that, created that flavor base. So whenever I smell, beets and garlic and dill, I mean, it's happening right now. I'm kind of like feeling all of it as I'm standing here. It brings me back to our first apartment in Nashville on White Bridge Road. It reminds me of, the taste that I felt, that felt like home, and everything else outside was still so foreign and familiar. But that was the one thing that felt like home. It tasted like home. It smelled like home. And we would always sit around the table together. We always ate together, no matter what, come hell or high water. We were always sitting at a table together. And it was our one way sort of to connect with each other, to connect with our food, to connect with culture, and our sort of comforts was to sit around the table and have dinner together. And I think if you think about soul food and you think about Southern culture, so much of it revolves around biscuits, ironically. So there's biscuits with sausage gravy, there's biscuits with buttermilk gravy, there's biscuits with jam and honey and steak and meat and whatever. I mean, there's so many variations of biscuits. They're savory, sweet. And I think that, I think that biscuits have the same effect on people that borscht has on me. I've talked to so many authors and chefs and culinary historians, and they say the same thing. Their family's biscuit recipe is the best biscuit recipe. So everyone's got some twist, everyone's got some trick, everyone's got some way that they make biscuits that is the best version of biscuits. So I think that if you think about it, like that's sort of a cultural icon. And so I think ultimately for me, those two foods really defined sort of my childhood and my growing up. And I think that, both are so simple, they're so humble, they're so rooted in family and tradition and home. And like all iconic foods, they have sort of a classic pairing. And so biscuits with honey butter, biscuits with sausage gravy. But I think for borscht, for example, there's a classic pairing that is a bread roll called a pampushka. And pampushki are like a raised yeast roll, similar to a brioche or a yeast bun. And those were usually, they would rise and then they would be, really fluffy and beautiful. And then when they would come out of the oven, you would cover them in a sort of a hot garlic butter. And so that was what you traditionally ate with borscht. And so for me, I think merging Southern culinary language and my Russian culinary language and putting those two things together has become sort of this iconic pairing that defines kind of who I am and where I came from. So that's where my biscuits come in. Is my biscuits take a little bit of a different twist from plain classic biscuits. And I know that some people would be very mad at me, but I love them. So I make my biscuits with dill. It's a traditional butter and buttermilk biscuit recipe, but instead of just a plain flour mix, I put in fresh dill. And when they come out of the oven, I smother them in a garlic dill butter. So it's similar to what you would normally traditionally serve with borscht, but we do it in a slightly different way. So it feels a little bit more Southern and a little bit more Russian, and together they make sort of this incredible sort of combination. And we like ours with an icy shot of vodka. So I think that kind of balances everything up. So in here I have 1 large onion. It's a little loud. Sorry about that. 1 large onion, 2 medium carrots, 1.5 cloves of garlic, and it's all kind of cooking in a vegetable oil and butter mixture. And the recipes are going to be sent to you guys afterwards. So I'm just going to kind of go through it quickly and mention all of the quantities, but I'm not going to go into detail. So in here is the carrots, the onions, the garlic, and it's sauteed until they're kind of, soft and caramelized. You don't want to brown them. You just want to get them kind of soft and caramelized. And into this, you add a bay leaf. You add a little bit of salt. You add a bit of pepper. And you add a pinch of sugar. Now, you guys are going to be like, why is she putting sugar in soup? Well, ironically, sugar makes everything better. And so putting sugar in your soup is probably okay, I think. I think putting sugar in anything is okay. But so you put that in there. I'm getting a little crazy. Hold on, sorry about that. And so into this mixture goes a whole can, a 28-ounce can of whole tomatoes. And I take whole tomatoes because I like big, uneven chunks. And so that goes into this pot. And then you kind of get that kind of going together with the bay leaf and the seasonings. And you want to get it kind of going so that it starts to kind of come together. And this is the flavor base. Like this is basically what, you're going to build on. And so I'm sure you guys have heard on cooking shows, and when you make things like, soups and braises, you really want to build up flavor. So every layer of this really does build on the layers before it, and it really becomes much richer and much more delicious. So the tomatoes, and then to this, I add 2 large or 3 medium grated raw red beets. And I know it seems like a lot, but the beets and the cabbage and everything else really does reduce quite a bit. So you really, it does get a lot less. It seems like a lot more when you first put it in, but it does reduce. So you kind of get all that combined. And then you add a little bit of water. So I add about 2 cups of water and get the whole thing kind of cooking together and sizzling so that it starts to kind of meld and all the seasonings kind of get into the liquid. And this is just to get the all the ingredients kind of working together. And so just to review, in here we have the carrots, the onions, the garlic, the tomato, a little water, the seasoning, and grated red beets. And so you'll start to see the color of this. I don't think you guys can see it, but maybe if I go like that, can you see that? So it starts to get really like this beautiful garnet color, this kind of magenta hued, rich kind of color, and you start to smell the bay leaf and all of the carrots. It smells kind of sweet, but a little acidic. It's really, really delicious. And to this, we're gonna add about a can of tomato paste. So it seems like a lot, but when you see how much liquid we add, you'll start to see that it starts to really flavor all of the liquid. We're gonna be using vegetable stock today to sort of create the soup base, but You can use chicken stock if you want to make it meat, but we're gonna keep it dairy right now because there's butter, and then we really, really wanna finish it with sour cream. So we're not gonna add meat. So if you wanna add meat, traditionally you add meat to it. And the reason that this is kind of a shortcut is because I end up, making a little bit more of this than I usually would just for one meal. And then we end up eating it without meat. We end up adding cooked meat to it over time, and just to kind of vary it up a little bit. All right, and so to this, you're gonna add about 1/2 a head of cabbage. It seems like a lot, and my pot might be a tiny bit small for this, but I wanted to get a kind of a shallow pot so you guys could see everything that's going on. So you add in the cabbage. And then what I like to do after I add in the cabbage is I like to give it a little bit more of a salting, just because the salt helps break down the cabbage a little bit and soften it. And a little salt or a little more salt is never a bad thing. So you kind of push it down and get it kind of moving forward. And then you start to add your stock. And you ultimately want, a full pot of borscht. So add, and you'll see the recipe when you get the recipe, and you'll start to see that, depending on how much you make. You can half the recipe right now. It feeds about 6 to 8, depending on whether you eat it as a first course or as a main course. So you add the stock, and then the last thing we add, get this out of the way. The last thing we add is potatoes. And the potatoes, it's about 2 large potatoes. I use russet potatoes just because I think that they cook a little bit nicer. They stay a little firmer, and I kind of like the starchiness of them a little bit. So that kind of comes together and sits in there, and I'm going to close this. And then I'm going to start the biscuits really quick. And then we'll come back to this, and you guys will see how it starts to kind of come together. And I actually have some made already. So after we come back from our break, I'll be able to show you guys how it all looks totally plated. So we're gonna close this, and we're gonna start on the biscuits. So I'm actually gonna put on some gloves because I want to keep showing you guys what I'm doing. And normally I would do this in my kitchen and next to a faucet so I could wash my hands, but we are not doing that today. All right, so again, you'll have the recipe, but we can just start with what we have here. So in here we have flour, baking soda, baking powder, and salt, as well as a bunch of fresh chopped dill. So you can kind of see the dill in here. It makes like nice flecks. And what you do is you take about 12 tablespoons, so about 1.5 sticks of really, really cold butter that you cube. And then this cubed butter goes in here, and you can either use a couple of forks, you can use your hands. Hands are really hot, so you don't want to really touch it too much with the hands. But I use this cutter, so it's easy to kind of cut things in, but you can use 2 forks. You can use, like I said, your hands if you work quickly. A lot of times people cut the butter and then freeze it a little bit just so that it stays. Because what happens is, and I don't know how many of you guys have made biscuits before or know how to make them, but what happens is, similar to pie crust, it's a short dough, meaning it doesn't rise. So similar to a pie crust, all of these bits of butter end up kind of getting trapped inside the dough. And you kind of do this until it's kind of like bits, like a course meal. And all of these bits of butter then are distributed throughout the dough. And when they bake, they end up expanding. There's a lot of water in butter. And so it expands and creates flaky layers, which is what you really want. So into this mixture goes about 2 cups of buttermilk. I use whole milk buttermilk just because I think it tastes better. And sometimes it's harder to find, but I think if you search, you can find it. Whole Foods has it. Most places have low fat buttermilk, and you can totally use that. But the whole buttermilk just tastes better. So then you don't want to work the dough too much. You kind of want to just get it like this. I don't know, Hunter, can you see that? Okay. So you kind of go in a little bit like this, and it's just, you'll see it start to come together. And then you want to add a tiny bit of flour, sometimes depending on where you are and how much, you know, how wet everything starts to look. You don't want it to be too wet. So you keep adding flour just until it starts to come together and you can kind of gather it a little bit in a ball. Sometimes it gets a little messy, but you want to keep it light and you don't want to overdo it. So let me just keep going. You keep adding a little bit more butter, and I'll just show you guys how to flatten it out right before you bake it. So kind of keep going like this. See? And you start to see how it starts to come and make a ball. And what you really want to do is you want to get it out onto your cutting board, which you want to flour a bit, or a counter. I obviously don't have a cutting board. I mean, a counter right here, so I'm using a cutting board. And then you just want to turn this out on the cutting board. And it might be a little loose, it might be a little messy, but that's totally fine. So keep going, a second. That's gonna stay, okay. And you start to see it kind of come together, and you'll feel it, like it starts to come together into a ball, and you know that when it starts to stay together and all the bits kind of stay in one place, then you start to get a little bit of a mound that you can then sort of work with better. So you'll see it kind of come together like this, and you just want to be super loose with it because you don't want to get it too sort of overdone. Let me move this guy. See? All right, so a little bit more flour, and then I think we'll be in good shape. And then I'm going to flour my sheet pan, just because you don't want to grease the sheet pan because you don't want them to kind of broil on the pan. You just want them to cook in a little bit of flour so that they stay really fluffy. And what happens is you just shape it like this, and I shape it into a bit of a square. And I like my biscuits, and I don't know how you guys like your biscuits, but I really like them super scratch made and super rustic. And I don't like them too fancy, and I always make mine square, oddly. And you can start to see these bits of flour that are really beautiful, and bits of butter that are really beautiful that are then gonna get a little flaky. And I cut mine just with a dough cutter, or you can cut it with a pizza cutter. Just really, really simple, like this. And some of the little corners might get a little bit smaller, but it's totally fine. The key really here is not to overwork the dough. You just want it to be super, super light. And you can see them, they're super light, and they have a lot of like height to them, so they're not too flat. So you don't want to like roll them out or push them down too far. So these guys are ready for the oven. They go in at 425 into the oven. And they stay in there for about 25 minutes. And right before they go in, and I'm going to take off these gloves. Right before they go in, you give them a tiny bit of an egg wash. And normally biscuits do not get an egg wash, but these biscuits, you want to give them an egg wash because they're savory. And what you want to do is give them a little bit of salt and pepper on top so that they get a little bit of that crispy, kind of crunchy coat. Because these are savory, they have dill inside, so you want to really get them. So I like flaky salt, like a Maldon salt, that kind of give you a little crunch of salt when you eat them, which is super delicious. And a little bit of black pepper. And then when we come back from the break, I will show you guys how these look when they come out of the oven and how to finish them off. In the meantime, let's see what's happening with our soup over here. It's definitely coming together. It's not done yet. So you can definitely smell everything. It smells absolutely delicious in here, honestly. Like, these guys are dying. They're like, give me the borscht. So you basically, if you can see it, it's already starting to wilt. And then the last thing you do before you really let it sit for about 10 or 15 minutes on the stove to really wilt is you want to give it like a really huge pinch of fresh herbs. I like a combination of dill and parsley. If you don't like dill, you shouldn't make this soup. I'm just kidding. If you don't like dill, you can just do parsley. You can add a little thyme. It's pretty forgiving. The dill just gives it a really beautiful, spicy, sweet kind of Eastern European flavor, and that's definitely what we're going for. So I'll show you guys how to finish it. And you got to let it just kind of simmer until the potatoes are fork tender. That's kind of how you know that it's good and done, when the potatoes are cooked, which usually takes, I would say, about 15 minutes, depending on the size of your potato chunks. But we're gonna let this keep cooking. And then when we come back, we're gonna finish it with a squeeze of lemon, a pinch of sugar, of course, a little more sugar in your soup, and a little bit more salt and pepper to taste. So this is going, the biscuits are gonna go in the oven, and I will show you what they look like when they come out and how to finish them. And I think that the next thing that we're doing is we're gonna watch a video about Lana Parr and her journey to America and coming to Nashville. So she had a very similar story to ours. A lot of the families that came from Russia had very similar stories, and the Jewish Federation played a big role in helping people settle in Nashville, settle in Tennessee. And it's a really special story. And so there's so many of our stories that have very, very different details, but all kind of have the same sort of bigger theme. So let's watch Lana's video and we'll come back soon.
I arrived in Nashville at the age of 5 from Belarus, Minsk, with my parents and my sister. We arrived in Nashville in 1989, and the second we stepped off the plane, we had volunteers that were waiting for us at the airport terminal. They actually, at the time, allowed you to go kind of close to the plane. They brought us to the apartment complex across from the JCC, and they had a fully stocked refrigerator, all furniture in the house. I remember that night I was scared. I had no idea where we were. I did not even talk for like the first couple of days being in America. But I remember that very first night I saw my mom standing on the balcony of that apartment, and I went to her and I told her, like, what are we doing here? Why did we move here? I don't like this place. I don't know why we're here. My mom took my hand. She told me, you know what? You can smell this fresh air. Our house has food in it, and you can be whatever you want to be in America. My family moved to America for a better life for me and my sister. The minute that my mom and dad realized that my sister wasn't accepted to a college master's program because she was Jewish, they realized like they need to leave. So there's a future for us, for my sister and I, and for my future kids and my sister's kids and our families. Like, I remember my parents like almost boarding up their houses because we couldn't take anything with us. What's kind of interesting is the government just wanted you to leave. They wanted you to leave your jobs, so someone non-Jewish will take over that position and take over your house. And my parents were really happy to let it all go just for a bright new world that they thought, you know, is the American dream. If my parents didn't leave Belarus, I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't have the education. I wouldn't have been able to go to college. I would have definitely not known anything about my Jewish heritage. It was kind of frowned upon to light a menorah and put it in your window. I actually remember my mom lighting all our menorahs in a closet so nobody would see that we're actually Jewish. And so just having my kids be able to light a menorah and put it out anywhere they want is really special to me, and it really is even more special to my parents. I like to give to the Federation because I really believe you should pay it forward. Interestingly enough, my husband, Franklin Parr, his family, you know, was very instrumental in me actually coming to America. How could I not love the Federation after that? Even if you feel like the Federation doesn't impact you directly, it really does. I think we can agree that Nashville has a very unique and special Jewish community, and that doesn't just happen by itself. I'm enormously grateful to the Federation and the generous individuals in our community who 100% changed the course of my life for the better.
While we are all touched by Federation in one way or another, stories like Lana's clearly illustrate the power of your generosity to change and greatly improve the lives of those less fortunate. It's because of you that Lana and her family's story was possible. It's also because of you that Federation was able to continue providing block grants to its 4 main agencies: Jewish Family Services, Akiva School, the Gordon JCC, and Hillel during the COVID-19 crisis. It's also because of you that Federation was able to create a COVID-19 relief fund for those most in need in our community. It's because of you that during this crazy year, the Federation was able to fulfill its financial commitments and support for local agencies, Israel, and overseas. I give to the Federation because I know that there are people in our community whose basic needs are unmet, and the Federation knows where to find them and how to help. I give to the Federation because it brings us all together and reminds us of what's truly important. I give to the Federation because I want my children to continue to experience everything that makes Nashville's Jewish community so special. I invite you to join Lana and me in making a contribution to the Federation in whatever amount is meaningful to you. If you already give to the Federation, please consider increasing your annual donation by 10%. This year is a particularly great year to make a new gift or to increase your annual contribution, because we have an opportunity to receive up to $60,000 in matching funds through a national human services grant. Because of you, no matter what challenges we face in the coming year and beyond, the Federation will continue to be ready and able to respond. Thank you for your consideration, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you to Lana for sharing her incredibly touching story. And thank you to Amy for giving us her why and for telling us what compels her to give to Jewish Federation. My why is because I love Jewish Nashville. I love the spectacular Jewish education that my children are receiving at Akiva, and knowing that Federation is supporting individuals in our community that are being affected by this pandemic. Just as Federation was there to support community members during the tornadoes earlier this year and during the floods before that. Now it's your turn. Think about your why. Why have you joined this event with other Jewish women in our community? Why is Jewish Federation important to you? What is your why? Please share your why now in the chat. And if we can count you in to make a gift to the Jewish Federation and Jewish Foundation of Nashville and Middle Tennessee 2021 annual campaign, kindly type yes in the chat. We will be glad to follow up with you. If you are ready now to make a donation to the 2021 annual campaign, you can do so through the link in the chat, or you can privately message Carolyn Hecklin Hyatt with your pledge amount. We also recognize and thank the Jewish Federation Legacy Society, who makes their gifts through their will, trust, retirement account, or through life insurance. Let us know if you would like more information on leaving a legacy gift. Thank you. Now, Sasha mentioned a second ago that she has a similar story. Sasha, would you like to tell us a little bit more about your story?
Sure. I mean, I think I told the most of it, but definitely had a really amazing kind of support system from both the Jewish Federation and the Fleischer family. We were able to come to America. We were able to have a place to live. We were able to have food in our fridge, to learn about the country, to learn about the culture, and really have the right kind of start to doing sort of, you know, to living an American life. I mean, we obviously worked really hard, and we didn't take anything for granted. And my parents worked really hard, and we all sort of, you know, we're a really strong family unit. The rest of our family ended up coming about a year later, and they had a really, strong support system from the Jewish Federation. I don't know if any of you all know a woman by the name of Annette Eskind, who's no longer with us, but she is, was a huge part of.
You guys?
Yep.
Jane.
I think
You said Annette Eskin.
What?
It's
I
okay,
think it's
Sasha. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Annette's fine.
Sasha, you can continue.
Yeah.
It's okay, Sasha, you can continue. Sasha, you're on mute. You're muted, Sasha. There we go, and we're back.
All right, we're back. So I think that was the bulk of the story. So, I obviously, if anybody has any questions, I'm totally happy to answer them. But, growing up in Nashville was a really, really special experience. My family is still there. I currently live in New York, but I try to go back as often as possible. Less often in the last year or so, given where our world is, but hopefully we'll get to see each other again soon. But yeah, that's the story. So I guess we're back, and I just want to finish up and show you guys how to finish everything so that you can sort of see it finished and plated. And so through the magic of Zoom, I guess now, I have some borscht that was made already, so you can kind of see how it looks when it's fully finished. And I'll give you sort of a glance at it. It gets a little bit, a little darker red. And what I like to do, and it's really thick. I mean, it's got a lot of vegetables. It's very hearty. So I like to say it's about 50-50, or I like mine 50-50 vegetables to liquid. If you guys like it soupier, then you can definitely add more stock, but we like it super hearty in our family. So we plate it just like this. See there? You get a little bit of something to clean the plate. There we go. And so we serve it like that, and then we add some sour cream, a squeeze of lemon, and that's just our family likes lemon, a touch more salt, pepper, and fresh dill, of course, always fresh dill. So that is how you finish that. And then the biscuits come out of the oven, and they look golden like this. And so you can sort of see, and if I pick one up, these are a little cool already, so they're not as hot, but you start to see kind of, this is what you want from a biscuit. You want these layers, and you want it to kind of come apart like this. And so all of these layers are formed by the cold butter that's sort of put through the dough. And then what you do is you take some melted butter with garlic and dill, and then you just sort of brush it over the hot biscuits, just like this. And some of that goes into some of these layers, and it starts to really, get in and give it a ton of flavor. And the dill and the garlic. And so it does feel like that traditional roll that I was telling you guys about that's traditionally served with borscht, called pampuszki. But this is sort of the southern version of it. So you take them like this, and this is essentially how we eat it. And so you take a biscuit, and you take some extra sour cream if you want, and that's really essentially the whole thing. So this is kind of how it looks. And it's an amazing first course. It's amazing for a second course, a little bigger bowl, some more potatoes, and that's the biscuits and borscht. So that's it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sasha. That was amazing. I know I'm speaking for most of you. I'm really hungry. Are you guys hungry? So now, Sasha, if everyone wants to stick around for a little bit, Sasha, you're going to stick around and answer some questions, right?
Totally. Absolutely.
Okay, so let's do it this way. So if you have a question, go ahead and let us know in the chat, and then we'll unmute you, and then you can ask Sasha, and you can have a little conversation. Does anybody have any questions? Let's see, here we go. We have a question about the difference between hot and cold borscht. Can we unmute Rabbi Jessica?
Sure. So hello. So I grew up with my grandma eating the cold, you know, the beautiful magenta with the sour cream. But then I fell in love in Columbus with a lot of, like you, a lot of Russian immigrants as I was growing up in the 70s and 80s with the kind of borscht that you just made. So I want to understand the derivation and how we, especially we Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, ended up with the jars of the cold stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I live in New York, and I got to tell you, the cold borscht in the jars was a new thing for me. I remember going to like diners and Jewish delis and seeing these jars of borscht or seeing borscht on the menu, and then they would just bring me like a bowl of red liquid, and I was like, what is this? So, but I come to find out that there is, you know, obviously borscht, you know, we like to eat borscht year round, so the more the better. So in the summertime, it's obviously too hot to eat hot borscht. So we eat cold borscht, which is actually not cooked as much as this. It's basically beet juice along with water and cucumber and fresh green onion and grated beets made into almost like a cold soup, kind of like a Russian gazpacho, if that makes any sense. And then you basically dress it with hard-boiled egg and some chopped cucumber and also sour cream. So it turns like this crazy hot, creamy pink. And so that's what we do in the summertime. And that's where the cold borscht came from. I think originated in the dachas in Russia. So in people's sort of summer homes or summer cabins that they would retreat to out of the cities in the summertime. And they would garden, and all of the vegetables like the fresh cucumbers and the fresh tomatoes and fresh scallions that would grow in the summertime abundantly got made into a cold borscht. And so I think, you know, over time, it somehow kind of became part of sort of Jewish culture as well, or Jewish deli culture, probably through, you know, Russian or Polish roots, I would imagine. So that's the difference between the two. And obviously, one is cold and one is hot, but they both have really similar ingredients. And one of them is cooked and one of them is not cooked. So I think, if that makes sense, I think that's sort of, you know, the difference in my mind. So in the cooked one, though, what you do is you actually cook the beets in advance. So you can either roast them or you can boil them, and then you take that liquid that you boil them in and you chill everything. And then you grate the cooked, cold, chilled beets into the liquid and the juice from the beets that they cooked in, that's been chilled. A lot of times people add a little bit of like pickle brine or sauerkraut brine also to make it a little bit more tangy. And then they squeeze lemon on top and sour cream, and that's how you eat the cold one. Does that make sense? Did I answer your question? So one's cooked, one's sort of
that was even better than I could have imagined the answer to be. So thank you.
I over answered your question.
So now we have a question from Marcia Ramey. Marcia, can you unmute yourself? She has a question about the wooden paddles. Actually, I saw a few people ask those about your tools.
Yeah, I actually, I already cleaned them away, but they're actually really amazing. They are, I got them online. They were like an Instagram, oh, thank you. Thank you. So yeah, these are amazing. They come in different sizes. I have this large one. There's a slotted one. I can send, Jessica, I can send you guys the link if you are interested. I'm not connected to this company. I'm not promoting them, but I'm happy to share the link of where I got them. They were sort of an Instagram purchase, but they were designed by a chef, and they're made from, I think they're made from olive wood, and they're really, really great. Don't run them to the dishwasher. And I do give them a little bit of an oiling, like a cutting board sometimes, just to keep them from drying out. But they're amazing because you can really like stir, and you can clean the sides like a big, like spatula meets wooden spoon. So yeah, that's what that is.
So Amy Goldstein would like to know, what do you miss most about Nashville?
I guess Nashville's a really different place today than it was when I lived there. I mean, obviously I left for New York when I was 18 to go to college, to the School of Visual Arts. And so I guess honestly, would it be cheesy to say I miss my family? I mean, I think all of my Nashville memories really do revolve around being with my family. I mean, I think we joke about how we come home for the holidays half the time and never leave the house. So all of these people would tell me about these amazing restaurants that would open in Nashville and all these places to try and all these things to do and places to go. And we would literally end up like staying home and just hanging out with the family. So I think I miss our family. I miss the trees and the greenery and the hills. I miss Percy Warner Park. I miss Dragon Park. I spent a lot of time in Dragon Park growing up as a kid. A lot of memories of all kinds, day and night at Dragon Park. I think it's quite different now than it used to be, but I definitely miss the outdoors. I miss a lot of the nature. I miss just having that right outside your window. I mean, I literally live in the middle of New York City, so I'm in Union Square, which I love very, very much. But we spend a lot of time on the weekends kind of trying to get out and get to nature. So I think I probably miss that the most.
So we have a really great question from Naomi Sedek. She
Hi, Naomi.
She says, Sasha, when from Russia where religion was taboo, what was it like to be in a community where your religion could be celebrated publicly? Do you remember?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I was too little to remember any of the persecution or any of the real struggles, but I definitely heard a lot of stories from my grandparents and my parents about not being able to practice Judaism openly. And I can't imagine how hard that must have been. And I think coming to America, they, more than anything, had this sort of just this sense of relief and this sense of sort of freedom to be whoever they wanted to be and to practice publicly. And I went to Akiva school. As a lot of you know, Akiva is a really, really special place. And all of the Judaism that I learned when I was very little came from Akiva, came from Rabbi Posner and the original sort of the old school Akiva. And a lot of those things have stayed with me today. And I think, it really, the one memory that I have that I'll share is I remember for the first Seder that we had in our home was very much like led by me, because I was the oldest kind of child in the family. I had like younger cousins and stuff, so they were quite small, but I was the one sort of old enough to kind of lead the Seder. I mean, and honestly, like no one really knew how to do it. So I had I had my Haggadah from Akiva. I had like all of my coloring books and my worksheets and things. And I was so prepared, and we made the Seder plate, and I was, I sang the Manishtana, and all the different things, that you do at a Seder, obviously, that all of us grew up doing and never really thought about not being able to do because of where you came from. And I remember looking over at my grandfather, and he literally, sorry, he was literally crying. And he said, everyone said, Isai, his name was Isai, everyone said, Isai, why are you crying? And he said, I never thought in my whole life that I would be sitting in America at a Jewish Seder celebrating Passover, and my granddaughter would be leading the Seder. And it was, sorry, it was very, very special. And it was something that, really stuck with me. And I tell people that story, and it's really touching, but it really sort of hit home in thinking about the fact that, no one in my family grew up knowing about the holidays, about how to read Hebrew, what all the meanings were for all of the the holidays, the sad ones and the happy ones. We did know a lot of the food traditions, though. We ate latkes. We had all of the sort of traditions and cultural and culinary traditions, but never really knew all the meanings behind them. And I think that was one of the biggest things that we were able to sort of gain by coming here.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, it's emotional, and we appreciate that you opened up.
Sure.
So you mentioned a minute ago, and I think there's a little bit of confusion about the Eskins. You mentioned the Eskins, and Julie Eskin is available to kind of chat with you if you want to talk to Julie. She's here. Julie, do you want to unmute yourself?
Sure. Hi, how are you?
Hi. Did I mess something up? Did I say something wrong?
That's all right. My grandmother Annette is alive and doing well.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Why did I think I was
No,
thinking
no
of
worries.
somebody
I
else?
know she would love to have heard your story and
Oh, no. I think I was thinking of somebody else. I'm so sorry. I
no
didn't mean
worries
to
at all.
bring that up. Sorry about that.
No worries, no worries. We're just glad to hear your story and
Yeah, sorry
For
about
sure.
that.
no, it's totally
I
fine.
think I was thinking of somebody else.
So Sasha, how long have you been, you have not been in Nashville in quite some time. And you mentioned earlier that a lot has changed. And I know just my personal story, I lived here and then I moved back 10 years later. And in 10 years, the whole city changed. So how long has it been since you've been here? And then we can kind of get a better idea of how much Nashville has changed.
Yeah, I left Nashville in 91.
In 91.
So quite a while ago.
A lot has changed.
Yeah, a lot has changed. It's definitely a totally different place. It's really beautiful. I mean, I love driving around. I love seeing all the new things. I love reading about Nashville in, you know, in magazines and newspapers and websites and, you know, blogs and Instagram feeds. And it seems like such a, you know, rich, beautiful community, both artistically and creatively and culinarily. And it just seems like, you know, it's burgeoning, which is really nice.
Well, we want you to come back, and when you come back, we're going to give you a tour of the J. We're going to give you a tour of the, well, it's the new Akiva building. It's new to you. Love to show you Akiva and love to show you the rest of Jewish Nashville, because since 91, a lot has changed.
Amazing.
So, does anybody else have any questions? Oh, here we go. Yes, a lot of people, or two people actually, have asked about your artwork behind you. Can you tell us a little bit about your artwork?
Yes. So we're street art collectors, and we really love street art and street artists. And I think living in New York, we have access to a lot of amazing art and artists. And this is an artist named Matt Valen that we really love. This is a guy named Joe Angadi, who's incredible. This is an artist named Krom, who's actually from Barcelona, but he's done a lot of work in New York. This is a portrait that my son Jacob did. It's a self-portrait. He's a painter and an artist. Some photographs some friends took. This is a friend from Mexico. So yeah, there's actually a lot more around the house, but this is just this wall.
Fantastic. And we have another comment here that everybody wants you to come back and open a restaurant. Will you come here?
As long as you all will come work there with me, because that is some hard stuff. Opening a restaurant.
Your Jewish will help you. We'll all pitch in, right?
Perfect. Well, at least we can maybe at least do like a special dinner. That would be fun.
Sounds like a plan. Well, thank you so much, Sasha. This is fantastic. Now, everyone's going to receive an email tomorrow with the recipe, so everyone can whip up some batches of borscht over the weekend. We also want to thank our amazing chairs. Thank you to Lana Parr. Thank you to Amy Goldstein. And thank you to the 57 amazing GNI hosts who helped us make this happen. Also, we want to thank you, a huge thanks to Michal Becker. She ran the behind the scenes tech for all of this. So thank you to Michal. And thank you for joining us this evening. Good night, everybody.
And thank you to the staff of the Federation, who's been amazing to work with.
Thank you so much. This has been fun, and I can't wait to see everybody in person soon, hopefully. Bye-bye, everybody. Good night.
Good night, guys. Bye.
Thanks, Sasha. That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Sasha, thank you. I know I didn't see you.